the name of the neighborhood that out off of Houghton?
Rita Ranch.
What is it?
Rita Ranch.
Rita Ranch. Thank you. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that became a community basically.
Yeah.
You know what I
That
mean?
was considered the outskirts, and now it's just
Oh, that was far beyond the outskirts. That was like
Yeah.
if you lived in Rita Ranch, you moved to Rita Ranch to get away from everything. You know what I mean?
Now you're surrounded by
it's
everything.
and now you're surrounded and it's connected. So yeah, yeah. Tucson exploded when my parents moved there, or around the time my parents moved there. And now it's like exploded again, like 30 years later, basically.
What year did they move here?
We moved there in '85. So my sister was still a baby. She was only like 1, and I was only 4. But I still have very, very vague, like kind of snapshot memories of us driving out there and watching the World Series with my dad. The World Series, that was the year the Royals won against the Cardinals, and I have very vague, like, snapshot childhood memories of watching the '85 series. And then after that, it was just growing up there. It was just where I grew up. So starting, Wrightstown Elementary, and then going to McGee and Saguaro for middle and high school. You know what I mean? Like,
which is now houses.
Which is now houses. Yeah, my elementary school. Which the really sad part about that is how old that school was. Like, it was built 28 or 29. So the school was almost 100 years old. It was like it was historic. You know what I mean? And they're like, nah, we need houses, bro. We need houses. So go figure. So are we live, my friend? Right on.
Good morning.
Morning. Welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, Pablo Martinez from Tucson, Arizona, and I was one of the finalists on the Christmas special on the Fortunate Fire episode.
Loved your sweater, by the way.
Oh yeah, we had to get it approved by the producers and stuff. That we had to send in pictures and we had to embrace the Christmas spirit.
Yeah, I don't think the producers would have liked mine. That'd have been,
Thanks for telling me, Alex. I got it figured out.
Oh yeah, Nikki just poked her head in and was like, "You can't hear John."
Yeah. Buttons technology. Good morning, Alex. Good morning, Nikki. Good morning, Francesca. Who else is in there? Speak. Show yourselves. So how usually we start off with the week. How was your week, guys?
Oh, busy. Well, go ahead, Pablo. Go ahead.
No, busy. Just telling John that of course, I have a full-time job as a social worker, and I actually have a part-time job with a hospice agency as well. So I doing that and then trying to catch up on orders with all the knife making stuff. So it's been any little moment that I have, I'm utilizing it to do something.
So tell me. I know we're probably going to get more into this when we actually start talking about it. But tell me a little bit about, like, how long does it take you with some of these orders? So you started, but like, what's the turnaround time? Like, somebody puts an order in, when can you expect, like, ballpark that you might be able to ship it, like, to them to your satisfaction?
And of course, it depends on
the knife,
on what it is, right? For example, like a bottle opener or a railroad spike knife. Mm-hmm. I can make it from bare bones to finish an hour and a half, right?
But that's it.
But if I have to make anything way more elaborate, we're talking 12, 14 hours for something to put the handle and everything on there.
Oh, okay.
Of course, the sheath and all that. It depends on the order and it depends on what it is. I've been selling a lot of these to this little camp spoon.
Oh, yeah, camping spoons.
Oh, yeah. That's nice.
And these take about an hour to make. So you take a square piece of metal and you're forging it out to the spoon and then putting a twist and stuff on it.
Does the twist keep the handle from getting hot? If the spoon is, like, say, like, in contact?
No, that's all pure decorative.
Oh,
when I have the metal to about 2,000 degrees, it's like putty.
That's awesome.
Metal's extremely pliable at 2,000 plus degrees. I mean, you can move it around no problem. But it immediately drops hundreds of temperatures immediately.
Right. I need. Yeah, I've got. When we get a little bit more into it, I've got a lot of questions. I'm very fascinated by that process. Like, and I'm, yeah, yeah. John, how was your week?
My week was it was up and down. We had the loss of, my uncle, my dear uncle. He was the first one that we lost in our family, and he was the heart and soul.
Oh wow.
It was very sudden and very tragic, and I want to dedicate today's episode to him.
Absolutely.
We had a service yesterday, and it turned out to be the service that he deserved. We celebrated his life, and there was a huge realization that I had being there yesterday. So there's going to be lots of really cool things.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, a lot of uplifting stuff coming, and a lot of that has to do with that rainbow I saw after his service. That kind of like widened my horizons a little bit. So I'm feeling pretty uplifted, right now. But other than that, it's just been a busy week as always. Keeping busy, staying alive, staying fed and all that stuff, making sure the kids are getting ready for school, because school's coming up, I think, in a week or two. So, we're getting prepared for that over here, so.
All right. Shit, man.
And
Good shit.
And Jay, what did you do this week?
Well, we went, obviously last week, we were all here in Kansas City, right? And then we went home on Wednesday, and then basically, like, what it turned into was me realizing very suddenly that the girls had Wednesday and Thursday off of school this week. So they basically went to school Monday and Tuesday. But due to standardized testing, they had, they took their standardized test, but I signed them both up for like Wednesday at 8:45 in the morning. And then they had the rest of Wednesday and all of Thursday up. Baby, hold on, please. Thank you. And so we ended up basically doing a turn and burn. We were home for a week, and then Wednesday, after the girls finished their standardized test, which took about 15 minutes, we left Colorado and came back to Kansas City for the weekend. So that's what we did. It was my daughter's 7th birthday was on Thursday, so we did that here. Had a good time. And then yesterday we went to a place called Worlds of Fun. It's the amusement park out here in Kansas City. And I just want to put out there, like, that my 9-year-old and my 7-year-old daughters rode a roller coaster that's 203 feet high with like a 170-foot drop, and it reaches speeds in excess of 70 miles an hour.
No.
So
I wouldn't even do it.
Bow before the bravery that is my two courageous little children. So.
Hey, that's something, because I'm a grown man and I wouldn't even do that.
Oh, me neither.
So unfortunately the sad part is after this podcast we have to now, I'll be doing a drive after the podcast, So I'm gonna be taking real slow sips of this beer here, and then probably about 2 hours after the podcast we're gonna have to freaking drive back. So we got about a 9-hour drive in front of us today. God. So yeah. Woo! That's the downside of doing a turn and burn.
And that is your limit. That is your limit. That's gonna
9 hours in the car is my limit. I learned that.
I got to write that down. That's a trivia question.
I love road
there.
trips. My actual limit is 6 to 8 hours, but 9 is the max, and I know that because of it's exactly 9 hours between here and my house in Colorado. Whew. So I can do Colorado to Kansas City because it's 9 hours, but typically especially when I'm driving with my kids and on a road trip, it's 6 to 8 hours in the car, no more, like no less. Like we can do 6 hours, we can do 8 hours, but whatever that next town is, if we're on a long road trip, whatever that next town is, it better be like right there. You know what I mean?
Because if I'm traveling with girls versus having, like, I have 3 boys, all we do is pull off to the side, open the door, and have them pee out the van.
Right.
But with girls, you can't do that with girls.
And honestly, like I think it has helped a lot because obviously I was taking my daughters on road trips when they were a lot younger. So like even the time that they were from the time they were both in diapers still, they've grown up taking long road trips. But as they got older and when they were potty training and we had to, I would plan out my rest stops. We might drive 6 hours to get to the hotel, but I'm making sure there's a rest stop, 2 or 3 rest stops in between that, and I know exactly where to stop because if I'll, lean back and be like, "Hey, girls, does anybody need to go potty?" And inevitably, it's going to be like, "Yeah, I can go potty," and it's like, "Okay, like there's a rest stop like 30 miles down the road, like we're hitting it as soon as we get there."
This is the time.
Yeah,
this is the time.
Yeah, so that was
basically.
You don't
feel like going, you're going to go.
Yep.
So, before we get to the meat and potatoes, I have a quick game review, as promised, guys. As of the last week and a half, I've been playing a very interesting, weird game called 12 Minutes. I don't know if it's a puzzle, if it's a murder mystery, maybe it's a little bit of both. You're in the game, and it's a top-down game, and you're playing a character who's played by James McAvoy, who's played Professor Xavier in X-Men. He was in Splice. No, not Splice. What was the movie where the M. Night Shyamalan, where he did the multiple characters?
Oh, you talking about like Glass and fucking?
Yes.
What was the sequel to Unbreakable? It wasn't Glass. It was God damn it!
It was a good movie too, and I don't remember it. Yeah,
I still want to go on record and state that Unbreakable is still to this day my all-time favorite superhero movie. Like,
there you go.
Still to this day, like,
it is a superhero movie.
Yes,
it really is. really is. And it's I will give a very close second to, and kind of a tie for second would be Logan and The Dark Knight.
Oh, Logan, yeah.
Logan's great.
But Unbreakable remains my favorite superhero movie of all time. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh no, it's okay. It was Mr. No, don't ever apologize, Jay. And so it's James McAvoy, Daisy Ridley, who is obviously Rey from Star Wars, and Willem Dafoe, and James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley are a couple who find out that they're pregnant, and there's some secrets going on that you have to find out. Like, there's a pocket watch in a certain area of the house. She's hiding something about the death of her father, and you have to figure out what it is. But the problem is, you're in a 12-minute time loop, and around the 9th minute, a police officer comes and tries to take the watch from you or whatever. So you have to figure out. I'm stuck where I'm doing the same thing over and over again, even to the unfortunate event where the spouse is getting murdered, and it's very graphic when it comes to the murder, because there's even a death scene with a firearm as well. So
holy craps. But then so let's take like about 1.5 steps backwards.
Yes.
So this is a video game, but you're playing it continuously, like in 12-minute loops. So like whatever you figure out in 12 minutes, you have that 12 minutes to figure out stuff, and then you go immediately back into the same shit, and you just have to continuously figure out more and more stuff. Is that basically? Okay, so it's kind of like you said, a mystery thriller kind of.
Yep.
What do you play it on, John?
It's on PC and Xbox. It's I believe it's a Microsoft exclusive, but
holy crap!
Yeah, so if you have it on you have the Game Pass,
is it on Game Pass?
It's on Game Pass. So if you have it on the Game Pass, you could play it right now. It's actually a 2 gigabyte download, so it's not even it's
not very much.
Yeah, that's. Jesus, that's a song on an Apple iPhone. So
I was gonna say it's like Call of Duty is like over 200 now or some crap. Like it's some ridiculous number.
It's a very the same developers came out with another game which I'll review next week because I still have to get multiple endings for it. But the company is very interactive with their games, and this one is just there's something very interesting about this because I can't put the mouse and keyboard down. I'm currently stuck with it, and I'll probably put out a video or stream it sometime today or tomorrow or this week, so you guys can check it out.
Check it out.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Especially if you have the brain for puzzles and stuff like that. This is the game for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the game for you. So I unfortunately I don't have anything more than that, but I think the premise of it is enough for me to be like, you know what, play it.
It sounds fun. It sounds like the kind of game where whether you've got 30 minutes or whether you've got 3 hours, if it's like the end of the night and you've just got a couple minutes before bed, why not pick it up because you can run a couple of 12-minute cycles in half an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Easily.
So I mean, if it runs in real time, I mean, you could still get feasibly a little bit farther down the road and then go to bed, or you could play it for 3 hours straight and just see what you can see or whatever. Yep. So it sounds like a good game.
Yeah, I even got so kind of frustrated and confused to the point that I actually deleted my whole progress and I started over again, and I'm back to exactly where I was before when I got stuck.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very interesting game. I do not have a rating for it right now because I have to finish it. I have to finish it before I give it a rating. Yeah. But check it out, guys.
Are there 12 minutes?
12 minutes.
Okay. John, are there multiple endings on this, or do you know, or is it just a straight up like?
Yes, there are multiple endings.
Oh, good God! So you can play it.
Yeah.
15. Oh God. Oh boy. Here we go. That sounds like a game you just go into like a black hole and just kind of disappear into for a while.
That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid of.
Right. Right on, dude.
Yeah, and you had some shout-outs to give to some of our heroes.
Absolutely. So we kind of broached the topic last week during our podcast when we had Chris Patterson on as our guest. And we had some stuff. There was some stuff going on last week in Afghanistan and still continuing through this week. And some of what I talked about last week, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that, especially for our veterans of the global war on terror, our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans out there, to keep your heads held high. And I said it last week, and I'll say it again this week. I don't feel like, the boots on the ground, the soldiers, the airmen, the Marines, our Navy, and even some members of our Coast Guard, we did not lose that war. Us, the boots on the ground, we did everything we were told to do and we were supposed to do. And this week, with there's some very harrowing footage, that I'm sure a lot of people and almost everybody's probably seen at this point, coming out of Afghanistan, specifically around the Kabul International Airport. When you see stuff like that, those are still people with their boots on the ground. There's Marines at the airport. Obviously, the Air Force has been flying and running nonstop missions to get as many people out as you can. I saw the video of a baby being held or handed over a concertina wire to the Marines. And when people are that desperate that they're handing their kids off basically to just give them a glimmer of a hope of a better life somewhere, there's still people, there's still service members there making that happen. And those are the people, like, we did our job for 20 years. And I want to reiterate that, like, that's the exact example I was thinking in my head of. That's how we didn't lose this war. You talk to the politicians, talk to the policymakers, we'll read some really cool books in like 10 to 15, years about the global war on terror. Mm-hmm. But understand that, like, the boots on the ground, we didn't lose that war. We did the right thing for 20 years, and you can still see the right thing being done probably up to this minute. So shout out to all the Marines and the soldiers and the airmen, especially the airmen. I feel like a lot of times the Air Force doesn't get enough props. The Air Force is the reason we had, superiority of the battlefield for 20 years in Afghanistan. Absolutely. So definite shout out to the Air Force, all of our Navy and Coast Guard out there too. So, y'all are the real heroes, and the ones that are still serving to this day, like, keep it up. So you're making everybody proud. So hold your heads very, very high. So that's my shout out.
America, yeah.
Fuck yeah.
No, so yeah, very, very, very. It is very, very wild stuff that's going on out there, and I saw a bunch of that footage too. And I saw a lot of bad footage, but then you also see a lot of good footage. You see a lot of, you see a lot of the people, getting ready to fight back and be like, we're taking our home back, boys. Let's go.
Well, and that's the thing. I brought it up last week. And a lot of what I talked about last week was that we basically went into somebody else's backyard and did whatever the fuck we wanted for 20 years because they couldn't stop us. And they didn't stop us. We literally, like, owned their backyard for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we just did it again at the Kabul International Airport. We had Marines go in, and I believe the 82nd Airborne along with them. And that's our airport. Like any place we fucking own it. So that, you know, it's not like the Taliban are overrunning them, you know, because they know they can't.
Absolutely.
You know, because every time they try that shit, we fuck them up. We literally like dick stomp them into the ground and turn them into fucking paint splatters. So
one of the big things that I've been seeing a lot of people posting and having conversations about is all the stuff that was left over. But I think, well, I think a lot of people don't understand too is that one, they're not going to have the resources to upkeep
that's correct.
that equipment, so it's going to become obsolete. What, in less than a year?
Yeah.
You know? And people are like, oh, now they have all these. I was like, well, it takes a lot of resources, a lot of money to upkeep this equipment. It's going to rust away and become useless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of them are probably already deadlined anyway, too.
Right. Right. They're at the point right now where they probably don't even work appropriately anyways.
I mean, we saw this in Desert Storm. This is, you know, a lot of those vehicles, they happen to be left there
useless.
For the same reason. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I don't know about you guys, but some of the up armored, let's say like the up armored vehicles, like the MRAPs and like some of the older Humvees, you know, the Max Pros, when you're sitting inside a metal sweat box with like, you know, 3 inches of protective bulletproof glass surrounding you, like it gets hot in there. Like on my last tour, like AC, having an operational air conditioner is like mission critical, because you cannot sit in those things. You cannot sit in those things with no AC. It doesn't work.
It's like a microwave.
I'm on my last tour, on my third tour, the AC went out like we had just barely rolled out the gate. The AC went out, and you know we called it in, and we were like, we'll try to punch through. Like we didn't make it probably 20 minutes into our mission route,
and it's over 150 degrees in there.
We had to call our PL. We had to call our lieutenant and be like, look, we're not going to make it. Like we need to like go back to base. Like we're not going to make it. And I was sitting in the back. I wasn't TC, so TC is like the truck commander basically. But I was in the back. I was going to be one of the dismounts for that mission, and sitting in the back, like when we got back to base, it happened to be around chow time, so it kind of worked out for the platoon. We got to just call the mission off and go to chow. So I guess that was good for morale that day, right? But when we stepped out of the back, it looked like we had jumped into a swimming pool. Like we were already like pounding our camelbacks. Like we had our kit on. You know what I mean? Like we were kitted up.
About 60 pounds of junk. Yeah.
I'd say probably closer to 30. It was probably 30, 35, depending. The Kevlar, the helmet's about 7, and then depending on the size of plates you use, you've got front and back plates and then side plates. So somewhere between 30, 35 pounds probably, maybe. Yeah. But still, and then you have your pants, your top, and then any other gear that you have strapped to you. So sitting in the back of that sweat box, like you can't. So if as soon as the air conditioner goes out in some of the vehicles that the Taliban got, like fucking let them burn. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like they'll figure it out.
That's what I mean. I think a lot of people are raging hell about how much they left behind, and they say, well, you got to consider that a lot of that stuff probably doesn't work.
Well, it's not going to work very much longer.
The upkeep, they don't have the means of keeping that stuff running. They just don't.
Right. That's right. Now, we have a comment from Alex. He's talking about he said these platforms aren't just pick up and play, and they're complicated enough to hinder their full operational usage. It's exactly correct. I also know that because my prior MLS, before I went over to the infantry, my prior MLS was I was a mechanic. I worked on a lot of these trucks, and they're not necessarily like a 1960 Chevy that you can just pop the hood and you can see exactly where everything goes. Like there's a lot more to it. There's computers in there. Whatever. Like we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah, so. we have a comment here from Joe Poe. Hey, start over. I missed the first 11 minutes. Actually, you're right in time. You're actually right in time. To start off, Pablo, do you have a website at all that we could if anyone ever wants to look at it or contact you, where would that be?
I actually just created an Instagram specifically for that. I named my whole forge, and that I have 3 boys, so I living out in the desert. I call it 3 Sons Desert Forge, and it's on Instagram. So again, three the number 3, and then Sons Desert Forge.
That's awesome.
I've been posting stuff. Yeah.
You have 3 boys. Like what's that like?
Well, it's awesome. I mean, their ages now are 5, 9, and almost a 20-year-old.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you were on the season 8, episode 6 holiday episode for Forged in Fire. How to start off? How was your experience overall? What did you enjoy about it?
Yeah. Going back like to the very beginning, this was a show that I used to just watch the first few seasons, and I've always been someone who likes to work with their hands and build stuff, and that caught my eye, and I knew nothing about bladesmithing or forging, nothing, absolutely nothing when I first started watching the show. A few seasons in, my wife pointed out, I was like, hey, they're doing a blacksmithing school here in Tucson. Are you interested in going? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, yeah, I'd love to go learn what those guys do. And then the guy who he was on the very first episode, and he was also on their on a redemption episode. So he runs the school.
That's cool.
So I went there. I was going there twice a week. 3 hours at a time for about 2 months, and learning the whole process. And a big one's the safety aspect of it, because it's pretty dangerous, right? If you don't know.
I mean, you're working with lava, basically. I mean,
the steel gets up to about 2,500 degrees when you're working with it. So, it's glowing red. So I did that, and then I started building my own home forge. Like, I got the forge and an anvil and some hammers, and then before I know it, I started just building my knowledge and my experience and everything at home. And I got to the point where I was like, hey, I can make knives no problem at home. Hold on, my little ones.
Hey, John, when Pablo was talking about always working with his hands, just to give you an idea of like Pablo's like kind of like artistic talent. One time we went to like an arts and crafts festival in Tucson. It's called the 4th Avenue Street Fair, and at this street fair, this is like in our early 20s. So we were just walking around, chilling out, looking at the different arts and crafts or whatever, and there was a scorpion. There was a scorpion that had been made using tie wire. So tie wire is like it's kind of a thin little strip of metal that you use to like tie off like rebar if you're doing like construction or whatever. It's called tie wire.
Yeah.
And so this scorpion had been kind of like twisted and bent with like a bunch of different strips of tie wire. Pablo literally like picked it up, looked at it, kind of did like the Rubik's Cube thing with it, like was looking at it. Well, I was in construction at the time. We went home and I had a spool of tie wire for my job, basically. We went back to my house and we were hanging out after that arts and crafts festival. And Pablo that night made an identical replica of that scorpion from sight once, without even like, he was barely trying. Like, this is just
natural artist.
That's a Tuesday in Pablo's world right there. Okay, like it's a fucking Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like that's what he did. Like, it's a no shit. Like I still have that scorpion. It's in Colorado right now, but I still have that scorpion.
I've told people my mind works differently. Like I'm a very visual person, so I can see something and determine how it might be built, or without ever, learning how to do it from somebody else. Like I have that capability, but if you ask me to sit there and read a book, I struggle. Like with my attention, I can't sit there, and I struggle to I went through hell in college because of it. But you asked me to build something, I'm like, yeah, I'm on it.
Well, and it says a lot too. You talk about nature versus nurture, and obviously, like you mentioned, like maybe having a little bit of some difficulties at times, like sitting in one place and like paying attention, or having to read a book about something you don't give a shit about. You know what I mean? But yet you can sit there and do like a freaking tie wire scorpion from first. It speaks a lot and speaks volumes about being able to do something that you're actually passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And actually falls in line with your, I guess, natural talents because of how your mind operates. And it's awesome that you're able to do stuff like that. And then so you got into Forged in Fire. You took lessons in Tucson.
Oh yeah.
And then now you have a home forge. You're getting hours and hours of practice in.
Right.
So now, like, what do you when you're getting all this practice in? What were you doing? Like, what was the learning process like? Are you just learning how to pound metal and make it flat?
Yeah, learning how to move metal because you make mistakes and how not to hit the metal and where to hit the metal, when to hit it. You gotta learn how to maneuver metal when it's hot.
Right.
Different steels have different components, so there's different ways of even treating the metal. And there's different handles, there's different shapes, there's different guards. I mean, I started kind of practicing every little aspect of.
What's the process of making handles? Because obviously that's a different material, obviously. So
yeah,
I
mean, you have like a full tang, which I have. You have a full tang versus a hidden tang. So you have the knife that goes all the way through.
Okay. Yeah.
All the way through. So the full knife is the handle itself, and then you have.
Is that a Damascus steel on there?
It is, yeah. So there's this was actually the very first Damascus knife I'd ever attempted to make.
That's beautiful.
Thanks, man. You can see a pattern in it there. I do the hand carving as well with it. The pins, the lanyard. These do serve a purpose. So if I were to take apart the lanyard, I can make a fire. Like I can go out in the desert and make fire with it.
Awesome.
Awesome. How long ago did you start forging?
Like forging. Early 2019.
Jesus Christ, Pablo. That's not even. It's like barely 2 years.
Yeah, about 2 years ago I started doing it.
And that you could definitely see like the natural artistry with something like that's amazing. I have to say that's amazing.
What did I just literally? What did I just fucking say? Like he's only been doing it for 2 years. He's already fucking pulling shit like that. Like like I would like sketch a shitty ass like stick figure drawing of like a knife on a paper and be like, you guys like my knife? Like here you go. So
like I said, certain things just come natural to me versus other things I really struggle with. But yeah, some things they just I see it and I'm like I could do it. Or fix things or repair things. Sometimes I like repairing things more than I like actually making stuff.
Interesting. That's awesome though. That is awesome though.
So for the first round.
So that handle there. Here's one of my.
Oh yeah.
So there's that handle, and then you have like a hidden tang. So you have one where the tang goes inside. You don't see where the metal goes inside of it. So you drill through it.
Awesome.
I don't know if you could see the.
And this, so you also, in the process of learning to make handles, you also have to learn a little bit of woodworking too. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. You got to learn with wood, different materials like brass, which grinds differently than normal steel. It becomes very gummy when it gets hot. Different wood. Sometimes man-made materials like micarta, which is a really tough plastic. It's virtually indestructible.
Do you know what knife I've always wanted? And you're gonna laugh, Pablo, because you probably as soon as I say it, but like I've always wanted a replica of the fucking knife that the dude that Woody Harrelson used in Natural Born Killers. That big ass fucking Bowie knife. You remember that shit?
I'd have to see which one it is.
I think I'm gonna have to place an order, dude.
I'll have to look it up. Which movie?
That thing is nice.
So different handles. I mean, you have, like a K-bar, for example, it's stacked leather throughout the whole thing, which is part of the first round that I had to do on the show. Was the stacked leather? I think I'd only done it.
It was a stocking. It was like the stocking was like leather, right?
Yeah. So they had all our stockings, our names on the stockings. And generally, they give you 3 hours to do a handle. And part of the twist was like, hey, you guys are only going to have 2 hours to do this. And I'm like, awesome. An extra hour doing that is gold. You can put way more detail into the. I think what a lot of folks when they go on there, I was like, you need to make something functional versus something pretty. And if you've got the time to make something pretty, then do it. But the point is, you got to build something that's functional. And unfortunately, the ending of mine, it looked pretty, but it wasn't functional. The opposite. versus the first one wasn't as pretty, but it did really well in the first round.
Well, and you had a major setback in the middle of the process of creating it in the first place, which really, that's one of the, and I don't know if it was how they, I guess, edited it to make it look on the show, or if it really was kind of like that. But I mean, you're talking about something that really functionally wasn't really your fault. It just, that happens sometimes in the forging process. And so when that happens, you were like, oh shit, I need to take 5, and because now you're halfway through your allotted time.
Yeah, I had spent already. We're sent home for 4 days to build,
right?
And I had essentially lost almost 2 days already,
right?
Yes. So I'm like, okay, now I got to start everything over,
right?
And do all of this in 2 days. So I let the clock and I let that panic set in. I missed a lot of crucial steps in the heat process, which made the blade extremely brittle.
Right.
So that's people ask me what happened. Well, I skipped crucial aspects of making a knife, and I panicked and I rushed a lot of it. And when you rush something like that, it's not a good weapon.
Yeah. But the fact that you took half of your allotted time and still brought them a product. I mean, my hat's off to you, because again, like, that's so far outside of my scope of, I guess, any kind of like artistic ingenuity. You know what I mean, to make something like that happen. So we have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
From Nikki Larson, have you tried any inlaid handles yet?
No, most of the stuff that I use is the like wooden pins and stuff like that. I have not done it.
What can you explain the difference between like some of the handles that you do and what an inlaid handle would be? Because I'm
so a lot of guys will inlay and maybe this is what she's talking about, where you inlay like gold into it, where you actually chisel designs into the handle itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, that's a whole nother ballpark. They've a lot of knife makers will literally send off their work to someone who solely does that.
Okay.
Who solely does inlay.
And is that part of the process? Is that something that is that like the next step for you? Are you gonna try to start inlaying, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've looked into it, but you require even more equipment doing that stuff, and it's a whole nother learning curve for doing stuff like that with inlay. Like I said, a lot of guys send off their work to have someone do that for them, because that's what the guy does, is solely inlay, and they're amazing at it.
Okay. And I think we had a question from Alex Lear. Also, he was asking about how many layers. I don't know which part. I apologize, Alex. I don't know. How many layers?
This one's, I think it was 60 layers. So the process for doing this, there's
many? How many did you say?
60 plus layers.
Like 60?
Yeah.
Oh, holy shit. Okay.
So the process of this is you take two different steels. You have one that has a higher nickel content, hence why some of it is shinier than the other.
Okay.
There's quite the process to making Damascus. So you take multiple layers. You take a 1095 layer, steel, which is a very high carbon steel. It'll harden, it'll hold on edge, and then you take 15 and 20, which has a higher nickel, stacking them over each other. So now you have essentially this big sandwich of metal, right? You bring that up to forging temperature, and I don't know if you guys see a lot of the times they put the powder on it. It's flux, and that prevents it from building up scale on the outside, and that prevents it from building scale inside of it, so that it sticks together when you draw it out. So you bring up that billet of multiple stacked different layers. You draw it out with the power hammer. You can do it by hand, but it's a pain. I actually used a power hammer to do that, to draw out this huge billet. So you draw that out, and now you have this long billet with maybe only 6 layers. Now you cut that up into 4, so you restack it again, draw it out, restack it again. So the more times you cut and stack, you're going to have a higher count of Damascus layers on there. Okay. I only stacked it twice, so drew it out, cut it, stacked it, drew it out, cut it, stacked it. And then you cut depending on the design that you want on Damascus, there's raindrop, so you drill a bunch of little holes. There's ladder Damascus, which is this. You cut slits throughout the whole thing and then draw it out. And you won't get that that design until you put it in ferric chloride, so it's an acid. Ferric chloride and distilled water, you do multiple cycles, you leave it in there, and it starts to eat away at the different metals differently. That's how you get that pattern. So the higher nickel content one doesn't dissolve in the acid as quickly as the other steel.
Okay.
So then you start getting that contrast of the dark and the nickel.
So now we're talking about chemistry and shit.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
There's literally like physical layers, and then there's like scientific layers that you have to pretty much like understand to really get this right.
Yeah, and to really bring out, like, for example, the dark. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
The dark versus the real shiny. You used when you're done doing all the acid etching, all of the ferric chloride. Then you put the blade itself for about 20 hours in instant coffee. The instant coffee will darken the dark and leave the bright bright. It's, again, chemistry, something that you learn. You leave it in there in some hot coffee. When you pull it out, you can really see the black come out of the blade.
That is insane.
Here's another one. This was made from an elevator cable. I don't know if you can see.
Huh. So you just went out and found some discarded freaking metal and ended up making something like that out of it.
So a buddy of mine, he was also on the show, and he has big chunks of elevator cable. They're probably 3 inches in circumference, about maybe 6-inch piece. You put it in the forge, you twist it up, and you bring it up to about 2,500 degrees, and that's a welding temperature. So you want this thing to be almost bright white of how hot it is, like you said, like lava bright, And then you just start pounding away at the metal, and then you get a billet. You lose a lot of the material when you're forging because you build up the scale, that stuff that falls off of it from the metal. But I don't know if you can see the.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of the grains of the cable.
I love that like weathered look on the actual blade itself.
Yeah.
Like that. I guess I don't know what to call it. Maybe like the discoloration, that rusty like metal look.
Yeah.
I just really, I'm a sucker for stuff like that. We have a comment here. We have a few comments here. You spent 2 days rushing to make a new blade. It was so impressive to see the finished product, regardless of the outcome of the kill test. You did it. That was from my wife who's watching. Alex Lear says, back in the day, a forge consisted of like 4 people: the smith, the assistant, the handle guy, and then the polisher, I think. And most forges today run one guy for everything, thanks to technology, of course. And we have a question here. Oh, this is a good question. My wife says, Pablo, what is the real purpose of using whiteout when working with canister Damascus? I've seen contestants use it. Is it the same reason why they use the powder?
No, so the powder is flux, and it's borax. It's laundry detergent.
No shit.
Yeah, you can buy flux that's designed for knife making. And again, what that does when you bring up the billet to a certain temperature, it actually creates a layer over it, like almost like glass, and it melts over it, and it creates a layer to protect the billet from building up scale. So from keeping the metal from sticking to each other. That's why you see a lot of guys sprinkle the powder on there. And it's borax. I mean, it's laundry detergent. You can go and buy a big box of it for $2-3. But you use that to protect the metal when you put it in the forge. Yeah. Now the whiteout, you take. I don't know if you've seen pretend this is just a canister. They'll throw a bunch of metal, and then they'll throw powder, which is 1095 powder. It's essentially grounded up metal, and you put in different types of steel. The reason for whiteout is when you can, and I think they make a huge mistake in the show because it chews through a lot of your time being able to take that can off and get the billet inside that's left inside. The whiteout prevents it from having your content stick to the inside of the canister. Now, in theory, it's awesome because if you have the time to let the whiteout dry, you let it sit there for a while, and then you throw your contents in there. When you're done forge welding the whole billet under the press or the power hammer, that can will easily peel off because that whiteout will also protect the actual can from sticking to all the stuff that you put in it to create a blade with. But on the show, you see a lot of guys struggle taking that can off because it's stuck. So if it were up to me, if I had to do like a canister, I would just throw everything in there, forge weld the entire thing together, and just grind off the canister. Draw the whole thing out to a blade, and then just grind it off.
Interesting.
That is
interesting.
The most interesting.
It's a lot less time consuming.
Yeah, and the most interesting thing to me about the whole thing is that the flux is borax. I would have never thought, I would have never known that at all. Like if you that's very interesting.
Pablo, they make specifically flux for Smiths, but everyone just uses borax because it's the same thing essentially.
Right. I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt, Pablo.
No.
I had a question. I remember when I was watching the show, it seemed like, obviously it's a competition, but there seemed to be there was a lot of camaraderie, really. And it wasn't so, even though it was a competition, it was like the four guys, it's you and three other guys, but everybody was kind of like also in the back of their heads kind of rooting for the other guys too. And there wasn't this like, dick swinging alpha male, vibe at all.
There isn't, man. I can't think of any time that I've seen the show in the past like eight seasons where people are out to get each other. A lot of the times you hate to see the other guy fail because the hell that you're going through, and you're like, oh, I don't want the guy to fail, even though he's in the competition.
Right.
They didn't show a lot of the camaraderie of us laughing throughout the. They can only show obviously so much, but there is a lot of camaraderie.
Which you could tell because just the way your guys' body language around each other when like all four of you were in there or when you guys were working together, they did show a couple of like very small, I guess, kind of interactions, and it was always I really want to say like friendly. It was just like they were all very friendly interactions, and obviously like
in a very tense environment too.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like, the last time I had felt that nervous was, I think back when I did sports. When I wrestled in high school. And you're stepping on the mat. You're like, I'm about to go up against this guy, or any sport for that matter. You feel that adrenaline.
Yeah.
But I think it didn't really settle in that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really actually going to be doing this. They take you off the forge. There's a lot of filming, obviously, a lot of takes and that sort of thing. But it didn't really hit me, and I didn't really start thinking, oh my gosh, this is about to go down. Until I started walking into the forge, and you've got 4 different forges lit up, and it is loud, and it sounds like a jet in there. Huh. My forge is a dual burner, so it has 2 burners into it, and it's loud. Like, my family can hear it when I'm out there. It's just 2,500 degrees. It's going to be loud and hot. Right. Well, these have 3, and then you have 4 of them in a row. So you have, 10 times as many burners in that room, and it's loud, it's hot. Then that was the only advantage that I had going into this, the heat. I can tolerate heat.
Because you're from the desert.
Yeah, and I'm doing this outside as it is. Now I've transitioned everything into my garage now, but when it's 100 degrees plus and you have your forge, it's exhausting. It's hot.
Alex, that was Alex. Alex Lear asked the question: How was the heat dealing with 4 forges in one side in one space? And
it was hot, but again, I could tolerate it. I think I told that to the other Blitzmans.
Cheers to Tucson, Arizona, ladies and gentlemen. Like, the heat ain't shit. It was the same when I went to Afghanistan. Like, the heat was like it was hot as fuck, but I was used to it. I grew up in the fucking desert, so it's like, okay, like, I guess I'll just do this.
Well, all the other guys were from cold temperature states. So Jaron, for example, he's from Oregon. It gets cold there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Stryker, he's from Washington. It gets cold there. And Cody, he's from upstate New York.
Yeah.
So these guys are from cold states. And when I went, obviously it was winter. And
you're wearing a sweater too. And you're wearing a sweater. Like a Christmas sweater.
Christmas sweater. But that, it got pretty hot inside the forge, and it was just like being home. And I know that a lot of guys that go into the show get heat exhaustion because of how freaking hot it gets in there.
It's been shown plenty of times too. It happens,
It's no joke. It gets hot in there, man. It's uncomfortably hot. And then, but that was it. That was the only advantage. I thought, okay, that's the only thing I got on these guys is I could tolerate the heat.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's the only thing you had on them, because I mean you did make it to the finals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what can you explain the process of before you were in the finals? So you walk in the room. There's 4 forges, and they give you this like Delilah, baby. Let's chill for a second. No, like, so you go in there. There's 4 forges, and you kind of have like a grab bag. Like, you don't even know what you're going to be doing, but they're about to tell you. So you're kind of walking into this whole situation blind. So what was the process from? They kind of say like, this is what you're doing. Go check your Christmas stocking or whatever they had the secret stuff in, and go. So can you kind of walk us through that first round where you were just like, and all 4 of you were together, and I guess take it away. Like,
yeah. So when we're brought in, and we look at our anvils, we see that there's something's wrapped, and I'm like, okay, we're obviously going to be utilizing whatever's in there to make whatever it is that they're wanting us to do. And then I'm kind of looking around, and I was like, I looked at the big Christmas sled. I'm like, I guarantee you they're going to have us tear that thing apart and combine whatever's on my anvil to that sled. Yeah. And in fact, a prior person you had last week, Chris Patterson, I had told him, I was like, I bet you anything, man, they're going to make us tear apart a sled or something to make
right.
Sure enough, right?
Sure as shit. Like,
yeah, sure enough.
Nothing new under the sun.
We get there, and then Grady, the host, tells us, hey, go ahead and open up your present on your anvil, and you've got these 2 square long billets of mild steel. It's like your everyday steel. Just it's not good for making knives. It's just regular.
It's steel. It's just steel. Yeah.
Steel. But the sled part of the metal, the sled part of the it was what the heck type of steel was it? 80 CRV20. So it's a certain type of steel. You had to combine it and make it into a sanmai billet. So sanmai in Japanese means 3 layers. So the inner core of it is a very high carbon steel, and then the outside of it is a mild steel. And the purpose of that, going back to it, the Japanese didn't have readily available good steel all the time, so they had to be able to figure out ways to combine different steels to make something usable. The problem with doing sanmai, as you see, is that you can develop a warp because different steels cool down differently when you quench. So a lot of the times the outside stuff will cool a lot quicker, and it'll pull the other steel. And so I had a gnarly bow in mine at first, and had to re-quench. And I don't know if you see the show. I have to re-straighten the bleed out, and so it's a process.
But
you did, yeah.
Well, and even the because see, like, I know John's very familiar with the show. Like, I am not. Like, you and me, Pablo, go way back, and I kind of stopped watching TV quite a while ago, right? But you even see the commentators or the main guys on the show. Like, when that happened to you, they were actually impressed with the path that you took. You chose to do a certain thing to fix your, I guess, mistake or whatever you didn't like. And the commentators, these master forgers or whoever the hell they are, they were like, he made a good decision right there. Like, that was a smart play, basically, and can you describe
that? Think on the fly. Once the time starts,
Describe that thought process. So you're in the middle. You notice that your blade has a little bit of a warp or a little bit of a bow. And how did you reach the conclusion, this is going to be the path that I take to fix this problem? Like, what was your thought process as soon as you saw that thing with a little bit of a bow or a warp, and you were like, oh shit, I'm on the clock, but how do I fix this in like less than 30 minutes? So, like, what was your thought process?
I had when I went for the quench and I pull it out and I start grinding, the metal starts cooling and it starts bowing, and I'm like, crap. My decision was to put it back in the forge.
Okay.
Try to re-quench the blade, and it helped a little bit, but I still had that gnarly bow.
What's the danger of a re-quench?
I actually have, when you explain it, I actually have a question about the quench.
You're developing a lot of stress in the metal. And the more stress you add to it, you're going to start developing cracks and delaminations, and you're going to really be stressing out the metal in it, and you're going to be developing small micro cracks throughout the whole metal, which makes it extremely brittle.
Okay.
I think what a lot of, and if you see that on the finale building the sword. When you quench a blade and you pull it out after a quench, it's like glass. You can take and snap it in your fingers. I mean, it's extremely brittle. And that's what happened with mine. When I was cleaning mine up, I hadn't taken that hardness away. It's called tempering.
Mm-hmm.
You can either do it in an oven. You can do multiple cycles. You can put the blade in an oven for 400 degrees for an hour or two. You do it 2 cycles. So it takes away the hardness of it, the brittleness of it, but it's still hard enough to hold an edge and to not break. Right. At the time that mine broke, I had just quenched and I was cleaning it up, and I hadn't tempered it, meaning, I hadn't taken away that brittleness from it. And when I was cleaning it, when I clamped it down a little too hard, and I heard a little pop. I was like, oh no. And then sure enough, when I was taking it off the clamps, it was split in half. I couldn't believe it. I was like, all right, time to do it again.
Yeah, there was a comment that you made too, where you stopped and you said, "I'm going to take 5 minutes commercial break." No, that was very heartbreaking. I do have a question about the quench though, because I obviously every single episode there's always a quench. You got to quench.
Always.
But there's only been one episode that I can remember where one contestant quenched in water, and the judges freaked out.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how far he got. I don't remember. What?
It was a successful blade.
It was a successful blade? My wife is saying it was a successful blade. What why do people, or some people, feel that it's better to quench with oil if it's okay to quench with water, or is it not okay to quench with water?
And again, it goes back to, depending on the steel, it cools down differently, so you need different types of oil. If you quench, it goes back to the Japanese. The Japanese have been quenching in water for forever. That's how they made all their katanas. Now, what they started doing is they added a ton of salt to the water. Why? I don't know. This is more of a chemistry question, but they'll make a brine, meaning it's a very heavy salted water. And it cools down the metal differently when there's a bunch of salt in the water itself. But the reason people use different oils is because different oils cool metal at different rates. Most metals, if you quench in water, will shock the metal too quickly, and it'll shock it too much to the point that it'll crack it. It'll literally fall into pieces. And a lot of the times, if you put the metal in water to try and cool it down when it's too hot, you're immediately going to start developing cracks in the metal. And some people do it. I know they've had some episodes where they do it, but ideally you want to quench in an oil. It'll cool down the metal quick enough, but not too fast that it'll crack the metal itself.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pablo. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I bought a specific quench oil for what I do. It's designed specifically to cool down metal at a certain rate without developing any cracks or shocking the metal. A lot of folks use like peanut oil or canola oil. It's called the poor man's quench oil, because it's readily available. Right. You can go buy a gallon of canola oil for what, $2? But a gallon of actual bladesmithing quenching oil is $30-$40.
Is there any inherent danger in quenching in water? Is it a danger to the smith, or is it more it's more of a danger to the blade?
It's more a danger to the blade because, again, if you shock the metal too much, it'll crack on you. It'll shatter in water.
So basically, going back like 300-400 years to like the samurai era of Japan, up to this point, they've developed in their culture and their society some very, very effective means of making these like badass like katana blades.
Oh yeah.
But what it came down to is basically like the most badass katana blades, were born in bath salts.
Yeah.
So the samurais basically have like these blades that are like on bath salts, and so no wonder they like just like wreck shop on like the people they were fighting against, right? Like
and they when you quench in water too, you got to bring up the water to a boiling temperature. And that being said, because you don't want to quench in, say, ice water, that shocks the metal even more, right? It's too quick. You're shocking that hot metal too quickly. So the ideal with water really salted waters, you want to bring that temperature of the water to a boil, as hot as you can possibly get that water, and then quench your blade. I know there was an episode they recently did where everybody had to quench in water.
Really?
Yeah, everybody. They had, I think,
No
these big
way.
fish tanks. Yeah, they had these huge fish tanks, and everyone had to quench in the water. And then they had this big, huge tub of salt, right next to it. And I'm thinking, of course, it's easier. It's a lot easier to be a couch smith than actually being on the show and doing it, right?
Yeah, like Monday morning quarterback in the game kind of shit.
Yeah, exactly. After my show, I got a lot of criticism from people on YouTube and stuff like that about, well, why didn't he do this? And that was really dumb of him to do that. You get a lot of people that criticize you, and I was like, well, it's easier. It's easy. Well, I was that person too, though.
Pablo, you cut out for just a second. Like, go back. What was the criticism you got on YouTube? Because I
got a lot of criticism from social media and YouTube and people. That not just for me, but for several other people. Oh, he did this wrong, or he should have done this. Well, they don't show everything on the show, right? They don't show me heating up the oil to 135 degrees.
Right.
You really should bring up the oils and waters to a certain temperature.
Right.
Before you quench your blade. They don't show all that stuff. So they think, oh, I bet his oil was cold, or I bet his this. Like, well, no, it wasn't. Right. But again, they're not going to show every little process.
When you only had 2 days to go, basically, when you're for the final,
mm-hmm.
When your blade broke, and did you just stay up for like 2 days straight, or like what was the process?
No, it is a clock. You've got 10. They say 4 days, but really the first day's 5 hours. First day, and because of COVID, that was another thing that made it difficult.
Yeah.
COVID, and typically you had some time in between to go home and prep for your final. I came home Saturday close to midnight, and the film crew was at my house at 7 a.m. So I had no time.
Right.
Right. I went to bed, woke up, and I had the film crew at my house in the morning. But once the clock starts, it's 5 hours the first day, then 10, 10, 10. So you have 35 hours. And at that, when my first blade broke, I had maybe 22 hours left to finish.
Jesus Christ.
So I was like, I've got 22. I hadn't even started my handle or anything. Like, I was solely working on the blade. And that blade was... could have been good if if it didn't snap. I would have tempered it. I would have done. Looking back at it, I still have all the pieces, and I'm looking at the grain of the metal, and I was like, this was a lot better than the one that broke on the show.
Really?
Yeah. It was a lot better looking, and of course, it was my fault. I snapped it before I could temper the blade and bring down that brittleness, that hardness.
Right.
I don't blame anybody else. Obviously, that's just my fault. I brought in a sword that looked pretty, but it was just not.
Yeah, but don't listen. The internet. The internet's always got a fucking opinion, and they're usually fucking keyboard
criticize.
No, and I never took it personal because, again, it's like sports, right? And I'm like that. Like, why the hell didn't he catch it? I'm like, do you have any idea how difficult it is?
Oh yeah,
what they do. That's why they're professional.
We just did it last week.
Well, that's like I was watching UFC last night with my girlfriend. It's like I can sit there from the couch and be like, oh yeah, you should have gone out the back door. You should have thrown the overhand right, to counter. No, shut the fuck up. No, because you're sitting on your couch. They're in the fucking cage. Fuck off. You know what I mean? Like
it's the same thing. Luckily for me, I had several seasons to watch this show and learn what not to do, what to do in certain situations. So. When I had my mistakes with my first round of making the chopper, I knew what I needed to do, where to go to fix those issues, because I had previously seen other smiths in the past make that mistake, and some of that stuff kind of came back to memory.
Okay, that's awesome, dude. Now, is there going to be any potential, like you mentioned, like a redemption episode earlier or something like that?
Funny you should say that. I'm actually still in contact. I'll message back and forth with Grady, the host. He's a really cool dude, man. And we'll message back and forth on Instagram. He's a really nice guy. Sometimes Jay, one of the judges that was on there.
Nielsen?
They just post Jay Nielsen.
Yeah.
super nice guy. And, they just posted, hey, we're looking for season 9 contestants and this and the other. And I immediately jumped on it. I was like, I want to go back on a redemption episode because they do have them, They have redemption,
and they're all and those redemption episodes. They're so impactful too. They're probably some of my favorite episodes because you hear the story and when they come back and win, it's like, oh man, it's so heartfelt. So I hope to see that, man. I hope to see that because you did a really beautiful blade. It was the George Washington battle, the battle sword. And I remember looking at your face, some of your emotions. When they showed it, I remember seeing you, and not just you, but your opponent as well. Were both like, holy crap! Like, this is completely.
We're not out to get each other, man. Really, this competition, what makes it very different from others is really you're competing against yourself because you've got to come up with a product.
Yeah.
You are competing against other people, but not really. Everyone's got the same, the same situation, and you're battling against yourself in the ability of doing what it is that they're asking you to do. So I think that's why there's a really strong camaraderie, camaraderie between. And one of the things I've learned in these past 2 years when I've made a lot of connections with other blacksmiths is everyone's always willing to support each other. Everyone's always willing to help each other out. And, even now I've become the guy that has people sending me messages and, hey, how do you do this? Hey, can you give me some pointers on this? And I love that I'm able to share and support people who are getting into this.
Absolutely.
Because I was once that guy, right? Bugging people. And I still bug people all the time. Hey, what do you, do in this situation? And there's so much to bladesmithing that it's a constant learning curve. And as much as I like making knives, I like making a bunch of other stuff too. I kind of ventured away from making knives to making, camp stuff, and I made a big old coffee table. One of my neighbors was like, "Hey, I need some door hinges, some custom-made door hinges." So I smithed some of the hinges for him. And,
that's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, different stuff. One guy's coming tomorrow. He wants a custom-made fire poker, and I was like, "Sure, can do that."
Oh yeah.
And other stuff, for example, this I was showing it earlier.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Little camp spoon, and this was just a long piece of metal, forging out the spoon part of it, and then for decorative purposes, you add a twist to it. This one's my wife's. I made it for my wife.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite pieces that you've made?
Probably that Damascus blade, just because there's probably 14, 15 hours into making this thing. And I got to use a power hammer, which are amazing to have. Obviously, I couldn't have one here because I pissed off all my neighbors, but they're loud, man. They're loud.
So do you have to wear like ear protection when you work?
Yeah, funny you should say that. About a month ago, I was having really bad discomfort in my ears.
Oh God!
And I would hear this this numbing, vibrating. If the air conditioning would turn on, it would trigger. It would go in my ears. I'm like, I started having tinnitus in my ears. So I went to get checked out, and the doctor's like, okay, what do you think? What are you doing that's causing this? Do you listen to loud music? I was like, no, not at all. I was like, what do you do that might be triggering this? I was like, well, I'm a blacksmith. I was like, do you wear any ear protection when you're hammering away? I was like, no. When you're using power tools, all that stuff's really loud. And so I now use it even when I'm hammering because I've tried both, not having it on and having it on. It's a massive difference.
Do you remember Pablo when I came back from my first deployment? I think it was my first deployment, and we took Elijah to see the WWE show in Tucson.
Yeah.
And because I remember I put in my ear protection, and you were like kind of looked at me like kind of funny, and I was like, trust me, dude. Like trust me. Like I wear earplugs at concerts now because I'm we're not fucking kids anymore, dude. And it's like, once that hearing is kind of gone, it's gone. And it's already bad enough, in my world. Like, I get it, dude. I get it. Like,
no, I think that when a lot of the guys that come and they want to learn blacksmithing and they want to, I mean, you get this anxiety when you're like, oh, I want to start hammering away. I was like, well, first you got to, safety is the biggest one. Eye protection, ear protection, gloves, the right type of pants, the boots. You've got to really protect yourself, because if you mess up, you don't want to lose an eye. You don't want to, I mean, you're dealing with really dangerous equipment, really dangerous heat. Again, the forges are 2,700 degrees. You don't want to skip a step in safety. I always tell people, man, safety first before anything.
Right.
Yeah. So with it being so hot where you live, is that because you see some forges, they have like a shack and stuff like that. But from the episode, I obviously it could have changed since then. You're in your backyard, so it's more open, so you get more of a breeze. Right. So was that something that you're more comfortable with instead of being inside of a microwave?
I just recently transitioned everything into my garage, so now I have all of my tools, everything that I need without going back and forth from outside to the garage, outside with, my drill press, my welder, whatever I'm using. Everything is now in my garage, and it makes it a lot easier to just reach over and grab what I need. I like forging outside, especially in the winter here, because it's so beautiful outside. I mean, it's 60 degrees, and then you've got this forge, and I mean, that's winter for us, is 60, 50 degrees, and when you're forging, it's just a lot more comfortable.
Pablo, repeat that for people that aren't familiar with Tucson, Arizona. Like, repeat the temperature in the middle of fucking winter in Tucson. Like,
our so-called winter. I mean, it'll drop at night, maybe like on a cold winter night, 25, 30 degrees.
But that's like 3 nights out of the whole winter, though.
Right. But generally, it fluctuates between 70 to 50 degrees for like 3-4 months.
Damn, and we hit the negatives.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Where you're at, that's no joke.
Oh yeah.
And funny you should say that, because when I went to go film, we did. There's a lot of downtime. I think people don't know that there's several hours of downtime when you're filming. Mm-hmm. Lots of downtime. And so a lot of us would hang out outside the studio and just sit and BS around with either the producers or the other Smiths there. And I'm shivering because this isn't in Connecticut. Yeah. And they had to bring a portable heater to me because I wasn't used to. It was 50 degrees when we were there. And I'm shivering, and I could not control my body temperature because of how cold I was. And meanwhile, the other guys are like in T-shirts and shorts, yeah. No problem. And here I am, full jacket, full glove. I couldn't regulate my body temperature. And again, it goes back to they're from different. They're used to the cold. I'm not at all.
That's very interesting, actually. That is very interesting.
He didn't have time to acclimate. I mean, that's something that we do in the Army. Is like if you were at Hawaii, and let's say you go to like Fort Drum, which is in upstate New York. They're going to give you a couple of weeks to acclimate, or pretty much anywhere in the Army, and you go to Fort Carson, where I was stationed, you're going from whatever elevation to over a mile high in elevation. Mm-hmm. You're going to 6,000 feet elevation. You have to acclimate to different environments. You know what I mean? And so obviously doing a show, you didn't have any time to acclimate, so you were sitting outside and you went from 50 degrees to 20 something probably, whatever it was when you were there.
No, when I left Tucson, we were still in the 80s, and mind you, when we filmed this, it was actually in October.
Ooh. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so October
with a Christmas sweater.
With a Christmas sweater, right? October here is about 80 degrees still, about 75, 80 degrees. October. Oh yeah. So it's still hot here. We still have our ACs on in October. Sometimes November. I'm not joking.
That's
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
that's
yeah.
Insane.
So then we get into the upstate New York, Connecticut area, and it's a 40, 50 degree difference. Mm-hmm. I flew in that night, and the following day we're competing. I struggled with the temperature.
Yeah, that's definitely like a weather shock to your body too. Because
Oh
I go there
yeah,
bad because when I moved down to Fort Benning during the winters, I was walking around in shorts and stuff like that. It didn't really snow down there, but it was like 40 degrees, and I'm
yeah,
walking around in shorts, and everyone's looking at me crazy. I'm just like, I like this stuff,
yeah.
you know.
I say I like the cold, but obviously that's
You found out
I
that
mean,
day that you didn't.
you do get used to it after a while, but it definitely, I want to say it takes at least a season or two.
sure.
You have to live in an area for the entire season,
Yeah.
and then maybe the next season you kind of get used to it, and vice versa for people coming from colder environments to the heat. You've got to live through the heat, and then maybe the next year, you kind of get a little bit more acclimated, or what worked the year before, type stuff.
Well,
You know
I
what I
can't tell
mean?
you how many people who come in here to watch U of A play. The stadium's outside. It's
Right.
still 100-degree plus. You got a lot of people coming in from like Oregon or all
Yep.
these cold states, and people are passing out in the stadiums because it's.
Oh
And
yeah.
meanwhile, we're out here like this watching the game. Like
Oh, absolutely. Well, and
we're used to it.
and that's one of those things where obviously it's been known for a long time, but I mean, you get a lot of these college sports teams and stuff, and you get the fans, and when the fans come from out of state, and you throw alcohol in the mix on a hot ass day at Arizona Stadium, like watching the football team play or whatever, like
Yeah.
people fuck it up, man. Like
It's sick.
when it's over 100 degrees, like you better check yourself. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean? You better check yourself, like real quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
So I just have two more questions before
Yeah,
we hit our
first.
time. First, this is a serious question. The other one not so serious. How hard does David Baker hit the weapons? Like, because we only get like a nice little percentage of it on TV, but he
Yeah.
looks like he really beats the hell out of these things.
Yeah. He does. Jay Nielsen is actually known more for breaking people's
Yeah.
blades all the time. He puts everything into it. The other guys hit it hard too. It's Jay that really puts him to the test. But to say that he hits it with, as hard as you can. He wants
my
to make
God.
sure that to see if they're going to hold up.
Yeah, it's amazing. So how was that sound like? Because you're not getting the music. You don't have the background music. You don't have like all the sound effects. So what is that experience like when you're watching
We're standing there, the mantles to the right. You've got the judges and stuff, and they pick up your weapon. It is dead silent in the studio, like dead silent. And then here he comes pick up your weapon, and it's just him hacking away. And mind you, the amount of times they hit it was actually 12 times. On the show, I think it shows it just a few times. It was
Yeah.
12 times that he hit it on the mantle itself, and it's loud, because he's putting all his might into it to try and test this thing and see if it's going to hold up. But no, he pretty damn hard.
That's pretty cool. And I also noticed in your home forge you had chickens. So as a Puerto Rican, growing up every single day with chickens pecking at my window to wake me up for school every day. So are you do you farm? Are they pets?
Yeah, we have we had them. Unfortunately, no longer. But we had 5 of them off to the other opposite side of the house, and it's funny because my kids loved the chickens, and when they saw them on TV, of all the things from seeing their dad on TV, they lost their minds when they saw that they had actually put the chickens on the TV show. It was like, no, yeah, of course they were happy to see me, but they lost it when they briefly showed the chickens on the TV.
That's really cool, man. Because I got excited when I saw the chickens too. I was like, oh, there's chickens. He's got chickens. So that was
Striker, the guy who won. He's got a full-on farm. I don't know if you saw. He's got like goats and chickens.
Yeah.
And he's got a full-on farm and where he's at.
That's really cool, man. That's really
we
cool.
had fresh eggs for a long time.
oh hell yeah.
That's really cool, man. And as a fan of the show, I think you could already tell like some of the humbleness that some of the judges have. How were they when you were with them?
And again, I think TV portrays them maybe not accurately. You know, like for example, Jay Nielsen's considered like the what is that? America's Got Talent guy. He's always mean to people.
Simon Cowell.
Yeah, he's got that type of character. But then you offset, everyone's super cool, man.
Hell yeah.
I mean, Doug Marquette's a really nice guy. I got to hang out and chat with him for a little bit. What happens when you get a lot of these guys that have the same common interests? You end up talking bladesmithing. You end up talking.
You're talking shop. You're talking
shop the entire time. That's all we did. Yeah. And you can't actually talk to them until everything is finally over, because they don't want favoritism. You know, so you don't even get to chat with them at all. I mean, you see them before you actually do the first few rounds. They come over and they stand next to us and they tell us, "Hey, have fun out there, guys. You know, do everything." You know, they give us a pep talk. Really cool people, but you don't actually get to hang out and chat with them and talk shop with them until everything's completely over. And again, this is because they don't want favoritism at all.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, obviously, they don't want to be perceived as the show being unfair. Obviously, so yeah. I mean,
they make everything extremely fair. I'll give them that. Everything's the same across the board, and
I really hope you make it on like a redemption episode, dude.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. I think the time is ripe, as it were. You know what I mean? Like, so.
And I just think I have so much more knowledge now because I did this 8 months ago.
Yeah, well, almost a year, dude. I mean,
almost a year, actually. 10 months ago.
It's late August, so I mean, we're heavily encroaching on October, so.
I think it's allowed me to grow so much since then to now. And now knowing what to expect if I ever were to go back, I don't think I'd be as nervous. You know, I think I know what to anticipate. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to. I just resubmitted an application literally, Wednesday to try and go back to a redemption episode. And I know there's probably a ton of other guys that would want to go back, but I was so close, so stinking close.
Well, in my opinion, with your, like I said before, you have natural artistry. You're a very, very cool guy. You're very talented. I don't see why they wouldn't. You know what I mean? You're really, your work is really cool. I respect it. It's, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it because I'm afraid of fire. I'm clumsy, so I would definitely mess something up. And like I see one of my best friends, Alex Lear, saying, he wants to ask his landlord to build his own forge in his own backyard. I've been wanting to take up swordsmithing for like 10 years. Seeing things like that, seeing people try to take up a trade that is so risky, but so mentally empowering at the same time. It's got to be, kudos to you, man. Kudos to you.
Thank you. And for me, it's like my therapy. It allows me to kind of escape and really just let off some steam and focus on. Because if I'm not actively doing something, working on something, I don't like downtime. I get very antsy, and I feel like I need to build something or fix something, or I become very anxious when I don't have the capability of working with my hands.
Absolutely. Well, before we take our final thought, can you just once again tell us where to find you on your socials?
Yeah, I've got one. I literally just created it yesterday, so I still have quite a bit to do and add to it. On Instagram, it's 3 Sons Desert Forge, so the number 3. For my boys, three boys, 3 Sons Desert Forge.
Awesome.
And
I think John has that pinned on our comments.
I do. And for Jay, we have another appearance here of Shia LaBeouf.
Oh,
when you see your homies doing good.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. When you see your homies doing good, that's right. That's just me sitting in the audience, just proud as fuck of my fucking homies, dude. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
And there you go. So
just happy as shit.
Absolutely.
See my boys do good.
And obviously before the final thought, guys, for 10% off your Rogue Energy For your next order on Rogue Energy drinks, use DD214 Gaming today. Also use code DD214 Gaming on your next art commission by Cobalis Designs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll take this one this week.
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, so guys, we have, there's a lot going on in the world, in our lives personally. We have a lot of service members coming back from Afghanistan. We have to, it's no secret. Once again, we promote 22 a day. Like I was saying earlier, I lost my dear uncle. And I said to my family members, if you feel down, if you're having a hard time, give me a call. For anyone who, if you lost a family member today, this morning, couple minutes ago, or if you lost your husband or your wife who's a service member due to war, you're not alone. Talk to somebody. For the guys coming back home right now, there's a long process that these guys are going to have to go through. There's guys who don't want to come home. There's guys who want to come home and don't want to face the reality. Give them a call. Those are your homies. Those are your brothers, your sisters. And then, like I say every single week, we are all that we got.
Yeah.
The number is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-TALK. You could call them or text them today. Someone is always there volunteering to hear your story. Someone is always there to hear your issues. And someone is always there to help you. Do it today, guys.
That's right.
Appreciate it, John.
And Pablo, thank you very much for coming. And as I say every week, if you're getting a phone call at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning from somebody, please pick up the fucking phone. Please pick up your phone. Yeah, Pablo might have been on the receiving end of a couple of those, from me, here and there. Yeah, just once in a while, right?
And to add on, Jay, as Nikki said, Marty was 1 year ago on Wednesday. So anybody, please ask for help. Please ask for help if you need it, guys. Pablo.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
It was definitely fun to pick your brain a little bit, to learn about the show. That's one of my favorite shows of all time, and to have you on here. Jay, thank you for bringing him on. I think it's so cool that you have such successful friends. I
have the friends that I kept in my circle, and there's a big difference. The guys that I, kind of grew up with, and especially going into my early 20s, the guys that are still around, as far as people that I keep in regular contact with, let's say quite often, a lot of them have artistic temperaments, and that's, I don't know, maybe I got lucky in the order, or maybe the universe fated that I would choose to keep a close social circle, but also people that were actually healthy and beneficial for a healthy and beneficial life, right? So, guys like Pablo and Chris and other people that are in Tucson, Arizona. By no means is Pablo and Chris the complete list, but if you want to have a healthy and happy life, you need to be happy and healthy, and part of that is who you choose to surround yourself with. So that's. Not to get all fucking 40-year-old dad on it and shit, but it ain't no joke. It ain't no fucking joke. Mom and dad were right about that shit when I was young. So, is what it is. Thank you, Pablo.
Last thing I'll say, man, anybody who is interested in getting into this, has questions, if this is something that somebody wants to learn, how to go about it, where to go. I've got a wealth of knowledge and resources that I go to now. You're always welcome to contact me directly. I'll be more than glad to help. Any fellow Smith around.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
You heard it here, guys. Guys, thank you. We'll see you next week for a very special DD214 Gaming podcast episode with more details throughout the week. Pablo, thank you. And Jay,
thanks, man. Appreciate it, guys.
As always.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Have a good Sunday and a good week, everybody.
Take care, bud.
Guys, be good this week.
Too.